Hello, everyone. My name's Natasha Janik. I lead product marketing for our loyalty product at Salesforce. We always like to start our presentations with gratitude, so just want to thank the Product Marketing Alliance for having me today, and thanking you all for giving me some of your time. So a little bit about me. I've spent pretty much my whole career working in tech. Came to Salesforce about 3 years ago, specifically to launch our new loyalty product. So it was an interesting journey, and while I don't feel qualified to talk about many things in this world, this is definitely something I do feel qualified to talk about, and I'm excited to share this with you all. So I kind of broke this out into 3 big chunks here of, how do you resource and even start planning for a launch? Some tips and tricks that we learned from our go-to-market strategy, and then enablement and evangelism, and then I want to leave plenty of time for Q&A because I know this is a really meaty topic. So I want to start with a little bit of a story about this product launch last year. So, I was told that this was going to be what we call a tier 1 launch at Salesforce, so the biggest launch you can possibly have, cloud level. So I was super excited, very confused why they were letting me as a PMM, be the one leading this, but okay. Thank you for the confidence. It was going to be this big Dreamforce splash. So for those of you who have been to Dreamforce, you can imagine main stage, Mark Benioff, kind of talking about this new product and then having a keynote and all of that fun stuff. And this was all going to happen in September of 2020. September of 2020. So it became pretty obvious by April that it was not going to happen. It was not going to happen that way. Our whole launch cycle typically, culminates at Dreamforce, and I was really expecting, this. Finishing my keynote, walking into our big party, really celebrating all of the hard work all of us were going to put into this. And, being a large company who loves to launch things all the time, we have playbooks. We have plenty of resources to kind of guide you through that launch process. But I remember sitting down with my exec sponsor, looking through the playbook, and we crossed out probably 50% of the things in there because we just couldn't do them. So it really felt like we threw that playbook out the window because of COVID. And this was the first tier 1 launch at Salesforce during the pandemic. So I really had no guidance, and I felt like I was shooting from the hip most of the time. So for the next 8+ months, this was me, right? I'm trying to figure out, how do we still make this exciting? And how do we still, bring that magic that Salesforce usually brings when we can't see anyone in person and when we can't, interact with our customers? So it was a really interesting journey, kind of reworking that playbook and creating a launch process for this new world. Since then, we've revamped all of our playbooks. I think I went on a tour of the company afterwards, telling everyone what I learned, what worked, what didn't work, because everyone was trying to figure out how to navigate this, new space. So when we think about launches, I kind of like to think of them, tiering them out, kind of like this. What are you launching? Is it a feature? Is it an add-on product? Is it a new product or category? And that last piece can be varied as well, right? We've launched products that are kind of smaller, not meant to be huge disruptors. And then we have other products like our loyalty cloud that is a new market for the company. So that's a much bigger launch. So I encourage you to, really think through what exactly you're launching. And I know we sometimes all want it to be bigger than it is. So I think sometimes having an exec or someone who can kind of bring you down and give you a reality check is helpful. But these all require different types of investments, which is what I want to talk about today. So when we think about resourcing and planning, these are my lessons learned from when we started. And we had these playbooks, and we're trying to figure out how we were going to get this resourced. So it helped us to have the work back plan already done. We knew what we needed to get done. We knew what teams needed to do those things. So we just needed to get the actual people assigned to those tasks. And what we did is we went to leadership for those different teams and said, who from your team has bandwidth, who from your team maybe wants a stretch opportunity to work on a big launch. And then that helped us maintain accountability as well throughout the process. And then finally, probably 2 to 3 weeks is generous. It felt more like a month before we even got everyone aligned. It was a lot of meetings with different leaders, a lot of moving people around before we finally got everyone kind of assigned to what they were responsible for. And when we did this work back plan, probably the biggest piece of advice I have is be realistic about what you can accomplish. I think I was like editing a data sheet on Christmas Eve. I totally underestimated how long things were going to take. The second is I would align like kind of that launch moment with something else that's already happening, right? Maybe it's a third-party conference. Maybe it's another suite of announcements that your company has. But I've found that trying to drum up your own interest when there's nothing else going on is a lot more difficult than maybe piggybacking on something that is already in motion, maybe already has press coverage. The third is scheduling those regular check-in cadences. I probably met with teams at least once a week. As we got closer, it was twice a week with our large team and then twice a week with just our marketing arm. And then having these tracking documents where you are telling people you need to go in there and update this every week. It can kind of get out of hand, especially from a PMM who is leading the charge, if you don't do that. And then leaving room for those additional asks, tasks that you maybe didn't think about. And then finally, sending weekly updates to leadership. I found that this not only keeps everyone informed, but it also gives you the ability to maybe have a leader remove a roadblock for you, and also giving visibility, right? Like you are leading, this very important motion for the company. Take the credit for it and make yourself visible to those leaders. So when I think about resourcing, feature level, this may be part of your release process. You maybe do a couple of extra things because it's a large feature. But on the left here, you'll see it'll be mostly, kind of the marketing part of the organization. And on the right side is more of like other aspects of the organization, right? So maybe you're putting this on the web, including it in your release notes. Maybe you have a release team, depending on the size of your company. And then you're working with product and engineering to kind of understand how does this work? Do we need to create some demo videos for this? This is a pretty cyclical, investment that I think we all make. But then you see it start to grow. When you think about an add-on product. Now you're working with pricing. We just got some great tips on, how to engage with pricing teams. You're talking to legal, going through T's and C's. You're going through technical demos and making sure that your documentation is up to date, that you have developer resources and all of that. And then you see things start to grow on the marketing side, right? Campaigns, creative, potentially PR if it's a big enough add-on. Maybe you want to promote it on social. Those are kind of optional here. And then we get to the large product launches, right? And things start to get really hairy. And what we found is, particularly for the parts where I was interacting with other aspects of the organization, so legal, pricing, partners, engineering, we actually brought in a project manager. And she really helped to be the liaison so that I only had to worry about all of these people, and she would kind of bring me in where needed in other parts of the launch conversation, so like pricing. And maybe some of you do multiple of these things on the left here, right? But these are all things we're thinking about through the launch process. So if there is availability of someone to just project manage, I would highly recommend it for a larger launch. So when we, were thinking about our go-to-market strategy, the industry we intended to kind of go to market with was travel. So that didn't really work out for us. So we really had to pivot and think about, we are in the thick of a pandemic. This product was going GA in February of 2021. It was a balance, right? We know that a lot of people were, dealing with a lot of trauma in the world. Businesses were starting to reopen and trying to figure out how to grow and how to recover. So it was a pretty involved research process of how we message this product and how we go to market. So this is typically like a cycle, right? For us, we start working on large launches about a year out. So you're doing the planning, market research, resourcing, and then highly recommend investing in messaging and positioning as early as possible because that's going to be the core of every other piece of your go-to-market strategy. And, we usually have this North Star that we're working toward, right? But we really found that when we were launching, and I think we announced in January of 2021, we just weren't able to capture the audience we were used to, right? Like we announced at a virtual third-party event, and it was because we had no Dreamforce in 2020. And we quickly realized that this is no longer the launch process. There's more than one North Star in the galaxy. It became cyclical. So we continue to do market research. We continue to revamp messaging and positioning. And what we did that I think was super useful was the campaigns and things that we invested in when we first launched, we were able to kind of carry that because, as you know, many of us don't have all the resources that we need. So while I had lots of resources when we launched, those quickly went away afterwards, right? So how do we kind of stretch that investment? And there's a lot of things that can kind of kick this cycle off, right? Maybe it's an event, maybe it's a market trend, changing expectations, or there's a significant product development or new add-on. So we've gone through this multiple times, right? When COVID, kind of first became, a reality for us, when I think we first accepted that this was happening, we had to completely redo our messaging. And then as businesses started to reopen, we had to completely revamp the messaging for that. Like, okay, now we're moving away from uncertain times. We're focusing on, growth. And now, with, whether you agree that we're in a recession now or it's impending, we're making that pivot again. So there are these market trends and world events that are triggering this new cycle. So we're kind of refreshing everything, and it feels like we're relaunching the product. So I'm kind of going through this right now again for this product, but we have just found that this cyclical approach is a lot more effective in having multiple shining moments to kind of maintain that momentum for your product. Now, when we think about messaging and positioning, it's tough. I feel like I'm going through some messaging gymnastics right now, trying to position a loyalty product during a recession. But one piece of advice that I got from a professor in grad school was say it straight and then say it great. I think a lot of times we can get caught up in like, what's that tagline gonna be? How am I gonna really make a splash with this product? But especially on the B2B side, say what you really mean to say. And then you can tweak it and make it sound better, but always start with that core message and then, develop it over time. Another piece of advice is, can your competitor say this? So anytime I put together a deck, I'm like, can Oracle say this? Can they say the same thing and it would make sense? So whenever we look at messaging, I know they can't say they're the world's #1 CRM. I know they can't power the entire customer experience the way that we can. And I know they don't have this really cute Astro character, so. And my last piece of advice on this go-to-market strategy is have fun. I think we are so caught up in our spreadsheets and our to-do lists. I remember having a jobs to be done list that was 100 items long, just on marketing. That wasn't including all the pricing craziness that was going on. Try new channels, new mediums. We're still in this like figuring it out phase, especially on the B2B side. So we did things like we launched a YouTube series right before we announced the product to kind of seed the market that, Salesforce is moving into the loyalty space. And I interviewed the GMs of every industry at Salesforce to talk about what does it mean for that industry, right? What does it mean in healthcare versus retail versus manufacturing? So that was one new method that we tested. And then, with the absence of like a really cool event to launch this at, I was like, what else could we do? Somehow convinced our creative team and our 3D team to create a whole new Astro costume for this product. And I'm not kidding you, I sat through meetings picking out the fabrics for their jacket and the colors, and we were like, those textures don't really go together. So that was fun, though. I'd rather be doing that than sitting with legal, any day. So that was like one of the fun things that we did and continue to do. I have a little plushie of this, and it's like my prized possession. The last piece I want to talk about is enablement and evangelism for your new product. So we ran a pilot the fall before we launched this, and I encouraged to have beta customers, have pilot customers, and get that buy-in early. Because if you think about it, we didn't really have customers going live on this product until about a year in. So the testimonials that we had came from our pilot customers. So really having them inform your internal use cases, quotes for your website, video testimonials. If you're making a PR announcement, having them participate in that. And doing this early in, and I didn't jump in as early as I would have liked to, but as you're onboarding these pilot customers, be involved in that process to say, hey, we would really love for you to be, a pioneer of this product and a thought leader for it. And then enablement, we could probably do a full session on this alone. But what we did is we had both sales and technical enablement. So for our sales teams, we really made sure they understood pricing and packaging and why things were priced this way. We walked them through buyer personas and how to talk about what makes us different. And then something that we did was we would do pitch competitions between our account executives. And we would have some type of like award or spiff or something. And then on the technical side, we really did days-long enablement sessions with our solution engineers and our architects to really understand how our data model works, how we integrate with external systems and the rest of our product suites, and really go through what demo assets are available, tutorials, and things like that. And then doing some type of demo jam or a challenge for them to demo that back to you. We found that really helped because they're excited when they're going through enablement, and then time passes and they kind of forget about it. So that kept them engaged over time. And then I promised myself I would never surface this image again. But get your sales teams excited about this product, right? If you're at an organization where they're selling multiple things, you want them to focus on this new product. So what we did was we did a history of loyalty video. So this is me in a Marie Antoinette wig. And we broadcast this during our all hands call. So me, all of our executives and board members are on a Zoom call, and I'm in a wig. So that was broadcast to, at the time, we had 50,000 employees. But I think just bringing some type of fun aspect to your sales teams, getting them excited for this product. And if that doesn't work, money always does. So that's always an option as well. With that, I wanted to open up for questions.
It was really well done. I can see why your list was at least 100 items long, really comprehensive, and world-class, honestly. When you look at the depth and the size and the scale of those launches, they're not small. So Well done. I do have a question before we get into this. Just it's a selfish one. As you look at the different tiering systems that you mentioned on releases, is that a consistent process across all of Salesforce? It is.
Yes.
Okay.
So we have a team specifically that is looking at all of the launches for the year. And we have one document that all PMMs update with everything coming up for that year.
Regardless of division, it's all in that.
Regardless,
One doc. Wow.
every
Okay.
cloud, every PMM, and then our leadership will go through that list and say, is this actually a tier 1? Is this actually a tier 2? And then that's how we budget and resource and plan for it. So it is a very unified process.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's probably a lot of us struggle with that. Is it's different from business unit to business unit, and priorities differ based on those business units. And it's
Yep.
hard to understand what a tier 1, 2, or 3 it really is. So yeah, it's great. Thank you. All right. So what tips do you have for PMMs that work in a company where a new product is launched every month?
Yeah, I would really encourage you to look at this tiering system and to help you to determine, how much investment are you making in each of these, and then potentially if there are products that kind of work together to solve a specific problem, maybe you group those products together in one announcement. And it's a big announcement, a bigger motion. That could be another option as well, rather than these short spurts of a cycle.
Okay, so this one, I think we've all been there. When a launch is delayed after building hype with the sales team, how do you re-energize them when the product's finally ready to sell? I mean, have you had that happen?
Yeah, so we actually announced our product before it was GA on the market.
Yeah.
So sales literally could not sell it. We had them creating opportunities with other products attached to them that they could then convert to our new product. So guiding them through this process can be a little bit tricky, but I would do an enablement when the product is launching, just a quick FYI. It can even be a pre-recorded video saying, hey, this is coming, we're announcing this, here's the first call deck, here's a data sheet you can send your customers, here's a couple demo videos. And then about 2 weeks, a week before it's generally available and they can sell it, I would do an in-depth enablement, get them reinvigorated, and that at that time, if you do have some type of spiff or budget for a spiff, I would introduce that then. That always gets them excited. But yeah, I would do 2 different enablements.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so you talked about all the resources you had for the launch, and then you lost those resources,
Yes.
right? Yes, unfortunate. But so you have that momentum, and then how do you keep that momentum after the launch? And then what tools do you use to keep that solution top of mind for prospects?
Yeah, so I think you have to be really thoughtful about what you invest in when you do have the resources, right? And this was something that I learned and I would have done differently. So when I think about the content that we were using to drive pipe gen, I focused on smaller pieces of content at launch. So we had a handful of things. And then about 6 months in, I had sales leaders coming to me and saying, we don't really have best practices. We don't have that big piece of content that kind of tells our customers we know what we're talking about. So we kind of went back and created a larger piece of content, all best practices. And then what we do is when you have that one anchor, you can create a bunch of derivative content from it. Right? And I would think about your campaigns the same way. Launch campaigns that aren't time-bound, make sure that they can stretch for at least, a few months. Because it is difficult to continue to do things without resources. I feel everyone's pain when they say that marketing never has enough resources, because they don't. But yeah, I think just being thoughtful about being able to stretch your content, stretch your existing resources, and then and it doesn't have to be a big splash. Those relaunch processes can be smaller things. It can be, hey, we've invested in, this new suite of analytics. Let's do a webinar. Let's do a white paper with, a publication. Things like that kind of drum up that interest and kind of can kick off a new campaign cycle.
Okay, question on measurement. How do you measure the success of a launch?
That's a good question. Pipe gen.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That was probably the biggest measurement that we used. And then looking at what that close rate is as well. Because I think with launches, at least for us, a lot of account executives were super excited. So we had a lot of opportunities created, and then we're getting a Q4, and it's like, where's the ACV? So I think really, looking at that pipe gen, seeing, was there momentum from that launch, and then how do you maintain that, but also start to pay attention to how quickly things are moving through stages of the opportunity really early on, and figuring out where sales teams might need help. At what stage are things moving out of the pipeline? Are they dragging things out quarter to quarter? I think that's really important because you're going to be measured on ACV.
Yeah, does that measurement on ACV go back into the prioritization when the leadership is looking at the tiers? Yeah.
Oh,
certainly,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah. Everyone's on the hook for the launch for what is expected, the resources are going into it. Yeah, great. Makes total sense. How do you manage the release timelines and communications with shifting release dates?
So our release dates are always set in stone. Like, there could be earthquakes, fires, acts of God, and this is going to get released on this date. But I would say open and transparent communication, particularly with customers, if something is going to be delayed, is paramount. I know our customers are, like, as soon as our release notes are up, they're looking at them, and they are expecting that feature to be GA on the date that you said it was. So sending that as soon as you know, and preemptively, to customers, to sales, to your solution engineers, and making sure everyone's on the same page with the message of why this was delayed.
And then any tips on working with product to build a product roadmap that allows for proactive launch planning?
Yeah, so I am fortunate to really interact a lot with my product team, talk to them like every single day. So when we looked at, so we did a very in-depth market assessment to determine, is this a product that we want to build or a product we want to acquire? And we really used that and that market research to inform what our roadmap was going to look like. So as I did buyer persona research, and as I was talking to salespeople and our existing customers on what their pain points were, I took that information back to product to say, hey, these are the items that came up a lot. Where is this on our roadmap? Is it on our roadmap? And then we kind of worked together to figure out, where exactly that will, like, what that prioritization is, where it will fall, and then we pull that into some of our release cycles, right? So when we launched this product, it wasn't completely, ready to go. It wasn't, robust, let's say. There were a lot of things that were still coming, so we would pull that into our messaging of, like, coming soon. We're continuing to invest in this. So it was an awesome product when it launched, but of course, this is a very old industry. So, there was definitely room for development.
I have a follow-on on that, actually. Are there incentives built in, without getting into any details, are there incentives built in between you and the product team on OKRs, bonuses, those types of things, so the goals are aligned on what you're trying to do together?
For us, no. Those incentives are kind of more general, like company-wide.
Got it, like bonus, that type of thing. We hit it as
Yeah.
a company. Yeah, curious. But I do think that's an opportunity area for companies that have more flexibility in comp structure, is to build that into not only bonus and OKRs for the product managers and the product marketers. Done some of that in the past, and that's worked really well, just to align behaviors, expectations, and ultimately the results and impact on ACV.
Yep.
So, yeah. Okay, let's see here. Well, post-launch metrics. How about that? Any specifics?
Yeah.
You talked about it a little bit with ACV, but just curious if there's more.
Yeah, I would say we really looked at a lot of our demand gen metrics because we were running a ton of campaigns. So we looked at that. If you're launching at an event, what was the marketing pipe that was actually derived from that? We looked at the number of opportunities created, and we drilled down into sales leaders, and those sales leaders in our target industries who did not have a lot of pipe, we really focused on reaching out to them, enabling their teams, and we would do workshops of, like, we're literally going to sit down, you're going to go through your customer list, anyone that has, already has one of our products, you need to reach out to them with, this email template, to get them excited. So we really looked at both marketing pipe, marketing ACV, and then just the volume of opportunity is created.
Yeah, it makes sense. Thanks. I think that's all the time we have for questions. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.